All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. As always, I'm your host, Adam Smith, with Just the Tips Coaching. And I've got a really cool guest today, and credit where credit's due for him making the time to do this on relatively short notice. I say that in comparison to the fact that we're usually booked about a year out for these episodes. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Mike Bernard. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good
Yeah.
to be here today.
No, I'm glad. Well, we've kind of been, circling around the same lamp. We've been moths flying around the same lamp for, God, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah.
And now we've got some much closer ties than we ever had in the past. So, yeah, it was high time to get you on the podcast and give both me and my team a little insight as to how Mike's mind works, and then certainly see if we can't poke and prod you enough to get you to give our audience some insight as well. Let's start at the beginning. Who the hell is Mike? Where did he come from? How long has he been doing this? What is he doing?
Yeah, those are good questions. And I think it's an interesting title for the How I Met Your Mortgage, which this tiny little world is, seemingly what brought us together. And to your point, been circling the same wagon for, almost a decade together, and met at a few events, shared some experiences together on some of the MFBA trips and some other mortgage conferences. And good to be connecting with you more recently on some other topics, and certainly good to be here. So I appreciate the time today, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to. All right. So how'd you get started in the mortgage space? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think, look, I don't know who grows up thinking they want to be a mortgage broker.
Nobody.
I was in my my early 20s, and I probably didn't even know there was a T in mortgage at that point, right? Didn't know anything about it.
Oh, you didn't study French?
Yeah, exactly, right? This was going back 2005. I had just finished school. And at that time, the subprime era was, in full swing. And, some of these subprime companies were looking for new, fresh talent. And one of the things that they were looking for was green, novice, young professionals who were coachable and likable, but didn't have a lot of mortgage experience. And, unbeknownst to myself, I checked all those boxes. So what these companies were trying to do back then is they wanted to teach you their way. They didn't want you to come in with preconceived notions of the industry.
Already tainted.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing bad habits from another company, things like that. So, in 2005, fall of 2005, I was hired to get in the subprime industry with a company. And I started in January 2006, and it's been my 20th year now. And sometimes I wonder if I've been in it 20 years, and sometimes it feels certainly that way. And because things are so new and fresh, sometimes it feels like I've only been doing it a handful of years, with the reinvention of just the way the business is done and the models are shifting. But yeah, it's my 20th year, and I've like many, yourself included, I've seen a couple of different cycles, the collapse of the subprime cycle in, 07, 08, to, the extreme refinance boom we saw with the rock bottom rates in 2020, 2021, the incredibly strong sellers market of the last few years. I'm in the Atlanta market, and our market right now is seemingly getting more balanced. And I'll use that with air quotes. I don't think it's fully balanced yet. The sellers still have a slight advantage.
We're absolutely still a housing shortage.
Yeah. There's a shortage,
there's an inventory issue for sure.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if a home's priced appropriately, we're still seeing multiple offers, and you got to come in strong and sometimes present an offer that's at list price or maybe slightly over. But again, being my 20th year, I don't want to say I've seen it all, because every day we're learning something new. And oh man, I didn't even think of this, or we could take a look at structuring a deal that way. But it's been 20 years. It's been a great 20 years, and if all goes well, I'll have another 20 years in me, and continue in this business that I've really come to love. And again, I don't know that anyone grows up thinking they want to be a mortgage professional, but it found me, and here I am, still chugging along.
So, and again, I don't want to dwell, maybe a little. Was this a wholesale subprime lender?
It was.
Were they on the implodometer?
They were. Yes.
Who was it? Come on.
Yeah, it was Accredited Home Lenders.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And obviously through that cycle, and that's really putting it casually, we saw basically what happened is that we saw this enormous amount of Wall Street greed in the mortgage-backed securities market kind of destroy that, as well as the housing market. A lot of the American economy, we refer to the subsequent period as the Great Recession, and literally almost had the power to topple the global economy.
Sure.
Which was pretty wild. And for those of you that don't really know what went on in 07, 08, that kind of thing, then there's a great film about it. And now I'm forgetting the name of it. But yeah, it's got an enormous cast from Brad Pitt on down. The Big Short.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, The Big Short. So if you don't really understand how that happened, then that's a pretty decent docudrama, for lack of a better term, on what went on. And this is right after your entrance into the mortgage space.
I didn't know any differently. And I don't want to look back and say, I now understand why they wanted green folks, but I didn't have a point of reference to say, man, this is really going to blow up. I just thought, to me, it was normal. It was the only, first of all, career I've ever had. I was fresh out of school. You hadn't
seen anything different.
Never seen anything different. Looking back, I can say, oh, wait, let me connect some of these dots. But at the time, you're just doing what you told. And it was a wild time, but it was, a quick rise to, a good career, and it came crashing down. And I had to, I don't want to say reinvent myself because I was still so green, but I had to learn the business from a different side, maybe more of a solid foundational business at that point. But it was a quick ascent and descent in my first 3 or 4 years in the business, before things started to get a little bit more quote unquote normal and streamlined in a way.
Was that your only B2B gig? Did you go to originating loans after that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was your only B2B gig. It's been B2C ever since. When
Correct.
Did that start? 08, 09?
Yeah, it was about 09. I went to call on one of my broker shops at the time, and I just said, hey, I want to learn this side of the business. He was my customer before because I was wholesale. I was calling on his broker shop, and I said, I'd like to learn. And he said, well, I'm not a great teacher, but if you want to come to the office, you can shadow, you can watch, you can listen to these calls, and you can do some work around the office and just kind of be in that environment, which is what I did. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I went to a little bit bigger retail shop. This would have been about 2011, 2012. And that's really where I started to get some reps, some good at bats. They were feeding me a lot of leads. At the time, the rates were pretty favorable, a little bit more so than they are now. So there was a lot of refinance opportunity in there. And that's where I really got a lot of transactional experience. So 2011, 12, 13 is really where I got a lot of at bats. And that's really where I learned the B2C side of the business, structuring loans. What does it take to actually be a good loan officer? What are some of the attributes that you need to be successful? And how do you effectively learn to build your own book? Because if you don't learn to build your book, if you don't learn how to nurture your referral sources, you're always going to be tethered to who can make that phone ring for you. And that's a great model. I'm not knocking that at all, but it wasn't what I saw myself doing long term. I wanted to have a little bit more autonomy. I wanted to, ultimately work with people that I wanted to work with. That old saying, you want to work with people you know, people you like, and people you trust. So not only do I want to be that, I want to be that professional that people know, people like, and people trust. But I wanted to get myself to a place in my career where I could select people that I wanted to work with who also demonstrated those qualities. And, coming out of 2012, 2013, I started to do that. Okay. I started to realize the value of those relationships in nurturing and how to, sustain some of these relationships now that have been 10, 12, 13 years going for me.
And just to take a step back, if you were talking to, and you are, a bunch of loan originators, real estate agents, other, direct to consumer, large ticket item salespeople, what are those attributes that you think are so valuable?
Yeah, I think for me, there's got to be trust and likability. What we do is so time sensitive. And sometimes it's not convenient. We've all had clients who are looking at a property on the weekends or on birthday parties or the holiday season, or last Friday night, it was 8 o'clock and we had a client who was looking to finalize some numbers to make an offer. So I say to a lot of my agent partners and referral sources now, if we're going to be working nights, if we're going to be working weekends, if we have to step away from our family for a time being, I want to make sure we enjoy each other. And I kind of have a saying, if we couldn't grab a beer together, go grab lunch, grab a glass of wine, it's probably transactional, and that's fine. We'll do the best job we can and we'll go on our way. But I really want to be able to sit down and spend 30 or 45 or an hour with somebody to develop that relationship, because we are going to be working odd times. We are going to be stepping away from important family time to facilitate transactions. So that relationship is so crucial and critical that if you're not doing it with somebody like, and trust, and they don't have that same reciprocal feeling towards you, it's just transactional, and that's okay. But doing it with people that's really where I think a lot of the joy comes from, because you're in it together. You don't mind stepping away. If you like the person, you generally care about the person, you feel like their values are aligned with yours. And it makes it a lot easier when you are stepping away from critical, family time.
Well, and I think that's one of these pieces of the puzzle that we emphasize when it comes to building a strict repeat and referral business.
Sure.
And how we jump through all those hoops when it comes to communication and contact management and social media and video and writing and we really want to make sure that we are, targeting, and that seems like a terrible word for it, but that we are focusing on the people that are like us, that think like us, that have similar goals, that have similar interests, these kinds of things. And I think one of the really cool unspoken pieces of that is that if we're doing that well and we're doing it right, then the people who they don't think like us, they don't act like us, they're not interested in the same things we're interested in, they kind of just organically go by the wayside. Jen and I refer to that as taking the trash takes itself out.
Yeah.
If you're really focused on that kind of a mentality as we're walking through how to build a repeat and referral business, then that just falls into place.
Yeah.
Well, it should anyway.
There are times where it seems organic and natural, and there are times where you see the turnover or the trash taking itself out where they're just not a good fit. And eventually they may have some success. I think we saw there were a lot of new loan officers that came in the marketplace, in 2020, 2021, 2022. And
we hit almost 1 million active licenses
compared to now.
Less than 100,000.
So and they probably saw some success, but it was fleeting, right? They didn't have the core attributes to sustain a downturn, right? And that's not to knock anybody individually, but it takes time and it takes a lot of repetition, and it takes, the transactions may be a portion of the business. A big portion of the business is also that relationship part. If it's 8 o'clock at night and you got to take that call, it's going to be a lot more pleasurable if you're taking it with somebody on the other end of the phone who you value, who you respect, who is not taking advantage of your time, but partnering with you. We're swimming in the same direction. We all have the same outcome and goal. And that can make it a lot easier when you're doing it with people that you're able to select, I use air quotes there, and work with people that like, and trust, versus being put in a transaction together where you may not have alignment.
Well, and because after all this time, and just for your reference, although you may already know all of this, I will have been a broker owner for what is right now about exactly 21 years.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And wrote mortgages for a little while before that as well. So it's been a career, literally.
Sure.
And one of the things I get and have just kind of developed this normal response to is people making that call at 8 p.m. saying, "Hey, Adam, we need to talk about XYZ. And I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, or I'm sorry to bother you at 8 at night," or whatever the case may be. And I got to thinking about that a lot. And when we're in a position where our business is strictly repeat and referral, odds are pretty good that whoever's using us again or has been referred to us is going to fit into that mold. 95, 98% of them are going to be people that we also know, like, and trust,
Sure.
that have that similar mindset, share similar interests, those kinds of things. So I really found it kind of funny that people were apologizing for interrupting that. I was like, because of the way that this has gone on for all this time, I'm in a position where I'm really only talking to people I like. And after all this time, I'm really only talking about a subject I love.
Yeah.
So interrupting me at 8 o'clock, an interruption at 8 o'clock at night or on a Saturday or whatever the case may be, by somebody I like who wants to talk about something I love, just doesn't seem like an interruption to me.
Sure.
It doesn't seem, and it's funny because they always apologize for it. I'm like, trust me, you don't have to apologize for that. This is what I do. This is how I operate. This is how I roll. So yeah, I'm absolutely happy to talk to somebody I like about a subject I love at whatever day of the week, hour of the day.
Well, what's interesting too, though, is I think those people that respect your time enough to offer the courtesy to say, please excuse me for interrupting X, Y, and Z, that in and of itself is already enough for you to say, it's not a drain on my time and it's not an inconvenience because you're not taking advantage of it.
It's not an intrusion.
It's exactly correct. So just by that simple statement up front with, I think, pure intent is enough to say, I'm happy to help. I have expertise in this. I can help you. I have found oftentimes those quick 2, 5, 7-minute calls after hours, it's the difference between settling a customer's nerves versus there being a full-blown emergency 8 hours later because they're just running their mind crazy.
Or longer. Yeah.
I've done this 21 years and there's a lot to still learn. But if I have information that can put you at ease, or if I can make you feel a little bit better by just providing clarity, it's an honor. It makes me feel good. Like, what good is this information if I can't share it? So all that to say, if they're the kind of person that appreciates that and acknowledges your time outside of a proverbial 9 to 5, by all means, we're probably going to do business well this time and hopefully many more times to come in the future.
Yeah, I think that's another important piece of the puzzle. Yeah. I think it's part of building that relationship.
100%.
Which is absolutely what we're doing. What all of you listening or watching should be doing is maintaining in the back of your mind, eyes open, eyes closed. It's a relationship business. And there's no reason. I mean, if you're doing this and the phone rings at 6, 7, 8 o'clock and you absolutely dread, and you and I have some colleagues that absolutely are not comfortable when the phone rings, which is weird because I'm uncomfortable if it's not ringing.
Yep.
Then there's a problem. But if that's something that's dreadful to you, then maybe it isn't the right gig for you, or maybe you're just not structuring it properly.
Sure.
And there's a lot of that as well. And God, you and I could talk for hours on this subject, and we're not going to get to do it today. And I do kind of want to fast forward because I do think it's relevant as this discussion goes. What does your team look like today? What are you doing as far as support, as far as other LOs? Are you currently retail, wholesale?
Yeah. So
give us a snapshot of where Mike's at today.
Yeah, so we're just a small independent, and I don't say just, I don't use the word just, but we're a small independent shop in the Atlanta market. I have a business partner, so Kelly and myself are the primary originators. Okay. And then we have a great small team behind us. We say we're small, but we're mighty. So we have 2 loan officer support staff. We have an in-house processor, and then we also have a part-time originator. So, we all work remote. And when we opened up Reliable Home Lenders 2018, we did it the way we wanted to originate. I like working from home. I am disciplined enough to get up every day and shower and pretend like I'm going to an office. That office just happens to be in my home, but I work, right? And if you fast forward a couple of years when the pandemic hit and everybody had to shift to working to home, I kind of made a joke like, hey, we're geniuses, right? We're already set up for this. But the reality is we just built a tiny little company that works for us. It works for our clients. It works for our referral partners. It just so happens to be at home. And we all work remotely. But I will say we all cover for one another. If we have a team member who's out for whatever reason, again, I don't know because they're not in the office, but they'll communicate with us. Hey, I got an appointment, or, hey, I'm going to take half the day here. I got to do some family stuff, and we'll all step in and cover. So while I'm primarily focusing on the origination with my business partner, we have an amazing staff behind us that oversees all of the operations and all of the technical stuff. And I tell my clients, I said, you don't want me in the nitty gritty of your file, right? I'm going to be big or high level. We're going to talk you through, we'll walk you through the entire process. But I got people behind me who are experts at the detail oriented side of the business. And we're going to make sure to keep you on track the entire step of the way.
Well, and it sounds like it's a very similar structure to what we do at my brokerage.
Sure.
Although we do actually have a physical space. And not that any of us really ever take advantage of it. I go maybe 1 or 2 days a week at this point. But I think one of the biggest pieces of that puzzle that we need to understand, certainly all of you that are in mortgages, real estate, even financial planning, insurance, etc., is that those people, that support team, they know minute to minute what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a lot of conversations where somebody will call me, a client, an agent. That one is more common, the latter. And they'll want to know, where are we at? What is going on? I'm like, look, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to walk down the hall, or I'm going to pick up the phone, and I'm going to ask Erica, my transaction director, or I'm going to ask Mindy, my transaction assistant, or I'm going to ask one of the processors, whatever it is. And then I'm going to walk back down the hall, and I'm going to get interrupted twice. And then the phone's going to ring, and I'm eventually going to get back to you with an answer that I probably remember about 80% of. Or you can call Erica. Which would you prefer? Yeah. Because that, I think, is the biggest piece of the puzzle, is that when it's legitimately minute by minute, boots on the ground, who's got their hand in the file at that moment, it has to be a team effort. So I do think that that's really, really relevant right now. And I know there are people out there that are doing it on their own. Yeah. One man shop kind of thing.
And I salute that person. Let me tell you, I salute that person, because it can't be me.
Absolutely. Well, and you and I know a handful of people that, have done it that way or are doing it that way. And they'll act as a loan originator 8 hours a day. And then they'll act as a processor 8 hours a day. And then they'll sleep 8 hours a day. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's limiting.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, and there's a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really, really important when it comes to the team structure stuff. And when we're working with coaching clients who aren't already adopting or have adopted this kind of mentality, I'll say, look, let's just say you hire somebody part-time, just to handle a few bits and pieces, real basic kind of stuff. Let's call it, 20 hours a week at $20 an hour.
Yep.
And that's going to cost you about $1,600 a month, give or take. But it's going to free up 80 hours of your time, 80. Could you find one more deal if you had an extra 80 hours?
You should be able to.
And does that one deal pay you more than $1,600?
Should.
Well, then you need some help. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and I know I'm simplifying the math in a really gross fashion and making it sound way too easy, and obviously finding that person and teaching that person and so on and so forth does have a lot of work involved in it. But literally, I think every time we add somebody to the team, whether it's sales, ops, or otherwise, we'll see a little dip, because now I'm going to spend some time, my team is going to spend some time with that person, moving tasks around, reshifting how we're doing things. Negligible adjustments in the grand scheme, but nonetheless, it's going to take a dip. But in the long run, every time we add somebody to the team, we bump 5 to 7 deals a month. Mm-hmm. We will increase 5 to 7 deals a month every time we add somebody to the team, more than enough volume to pay them.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of not being short-sighted, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do I want to be Nexa or Rocket or any of that and have that kind of, management need, that kind of, I don't even know how to describe the adult daycare that would come along with the sales management of an enormous operation, a team of originators? No. I've done it. Before I became a broker owner, I was offered and acted in a sales manager role for a period. On paper, it sounded really good. Hey, you'll get X, YZ bips on basis points on everybody's production, and you can do your own work. And of course, I didn't have any control over who they were hiring.
No.
I was merely managing the people that they hired. Do bear in mind, for all of you listening or watching, this was before there was any regulation over the mortgage business in Colorado. So they're literally hiring fry cooks and strippers, and they weren't producing anything. So it didn't matter what the override was. Anything times zero is still zero.
The old Wild West days.
And they were so bad at it that there wasn't any time for me to focus on my own production. So there's another zero. And yeah, that was probably the most horrible experience I'd had in the mortgage space in 25 years. So yeah, it's a very, very difficult role.
Yeah.
And in order for any of you to build up and this is the end goal for all of our coaching clients, is to build a strict repeat and referral business that you can eventually walk away from while it still pays you. And that's important. That's literally the pinnacle where we expect people to get or be able to get with the knowledge that we give them over their coaching, over that year or so that they spend with us. And I think it's important to understand that we're slowly building that we're looking for really good loan originators and then coaching them up and mentoring them to maybe eventually get to the same point.
For sure.
And we're definitely working closely with operations and putting in a bunch of framework, a lot of steps. I refer to it as kind of a Big Mac, and it's the same person takes the order, and the same person opens up the box and lays out the bun, and the same person on every mortgage that we do lays down the lettuce and the special sauce and the pickles, and then it's the same person who's cooking the patties and putting the burger, and then it's the same person who closes it all up and delivers it to the consumer, to the client. So ops is equally important. There's no question. They've got to be built simultaneously, but doing it in a manner where it's, kind of like what we experienced back in, let's say, 03, 4, 5, 6, where we were just putting bodies in chairs because of what was going on in the subprime space.
Chaotic.
How many of those people are left, though, today? Of the, 90-some thousand that are licensed to write mortgages in this country, how many saw that era and are still doing it today? I can't remember. You and I probably know all 200 of them.
It can't be many. That's right. Yeah, it can't be many.
That's the entire Fight Club group right there.
But that's our world.
Yeah, that is our world.
Where we operate.
Yeah, it's unique and it's difficult. You rarely hear about a new mortgage originator.
Yeah.
The bar is really high. It is definitely a challenging endeavor.
Sure.
But the rewards, man, helping people in that kind of fashion. I mean, how many gigs are out there where you really get to help people and get paid for it?
Well, it really feels good, too, when you really help somebody. When you step back and realize, I know we do this every day, and you're on your 21st year being a broker owner and in 25th year in the business, and countless transactions, probably thousands of transactions, if not tens of thousands. But every one of those is meaningful. And for most of us, it's the largest purchase of our lives. Maybe there's some boats out there, some yachts, some planes, who knows, they're probably not getting financing from us, but for most of our customers, it's one of the most impactful days of their lives. And we get to be a small part in helping that. And when we can reframe our job into that, it's a lot more.
It's actually funny that you say that, because we're working on a cash out refinance of an airplane hangar so that the guy can buy another plane.
Well, there you go.
But along the lines of having these off-hours conversations, again, I'm talking to people I like about a subject I love. One of the, I don't want to call it a catchphrase per se, but one of the things that just trips off my tongue every time I'm having this conversation is, look, have you ever spent $800,000 on something before?
Yeah.
No? Oh, well, then let's treat that with the respect that it deserves.
Great line, yeah.
Let's look at all of these pieces. Let's really figure out what's going to be best for your finances in a year and 3 and 5, and not just at time of transaction.
Sure.
Let's make sure that we're really setting you up for, a better financial future, because you and I both know that owning real estate is a huge piece of that.
It's a great way to frame it. Hopefully that helps the consumer wrap their mind around. There's a lot more that goes into it than a few basic questions that everyone knows how to ask.
Seriously. Yeah, no question about it. Well, shit, Mike, this has been amazing.
It's gone by fast.
And we knew it would. David Ryder, this is a good one. David saying, good morning, crew. And David wants to know if he can get a loan for his dinghy.
Well, let's see if we can facilitate that airplane hangar first, and then we'll go the other direction and get the dinghy taken care of.
Maybe. Although, David, I would just say take some cash out of your yacht. And then you should be fine for getting your dinghy purchased with cash.
That's right. If that dinghy's not attached to his yacht.
Right. That's absolutely it when it comes to David. I am happy to say, well, I know David very well. I've spent a ton of time with him. I've been to his home. We've spent a lot of time in his market, which is Phoenix. And we've spent a lot of time at conferences together, both as mortgage originators as well as JTT coaches. And I am happy to say I've never seen David's dinghy. Yeah. All right. Well, Mike, thank you for doing it. I certainly do appreciate you carving this kind of time out. I know it's not easy on a Monday morning, and let's absolutely get you booked for another episode, because we have 1,000 other subjects to cover.
We got a lot more to dig into.
We even talked about a bunch that we were going to talk about today and couldn't get to. We're going to get there. Absolutely.
Have a great time.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike. If there is somebody in need of your services, or maybe somebody that might be contemplating what it's like to be in an environment like yours, how do they find you?
They can find us. ReliableHomeLenders.com is our website, and we just have a small bio there, so be happy to reach out, and we can take it from there. But if I can do anything to help any of your audience or your viewership as well, I'll be more than happy. And if there's anything we didn't cover that they're interested in, or Adam, that you and I need to scratch the surface on, we'll be sure to do this again, and hopefully sooner than later.
And I'll bet, just because I use this quite a bit here locally, if I did a search on Mike Bernard Mortgage Atlanta, I'm probably going to find you.
I hope you would. Yeah. Although it's a relatively large market here, but I don't know. At least I haven't come across any other Mike Bernard, although there are a few other Bernards first names in the business. I think I am the only Mike Bernard in the Atlanta area for the mortgage space.
All right. So that's a great way to track you down. Mike, don't run off. I'm going to run our extra. I'm going to give the audience a little bit of insight on how to find things. Like if you want to see other episodes of How I Met Your Mortgage, if you want to catch our video blog, The Weekly Little Tip, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, if you want to find out more about our annual conference, on and on, copies of the books I've written on this subject. Oh, look at that. Mike is so prepared. How did you get that?
They even got the autograph version right there.
Wow. Okay, so Mike has an autograph copy of Just the Tips. And if you want one, by all means, go check out justthetipscoaching.com. For all of you watching or listening live or in syndication, thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week with another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. David, thank you for participating this week. Love seeing you. Been a long time since we've talked as well. And we will see you guys next time.